What Fine is in jail for is missing a deadline by 1 day.
Attorney Richard I. Fine has been disbarred and jailed since March of 2009. Leslie Dutton of Full Disclosure has been covering the unbelievable saga of judicial corruption from the beginning.
The process of destroying Mr. Fine started in Superior Court when the lawyers for the developers of the Del Rey Shores enlisted Commissioner Mitchell to penalize Mr. Fine for a clerical error with a huge fine which they knew he couldn't pay.
Fine was being forced to pay the legal fee. So he's disbarred, he's probably has no income, and then they want him to pay the legal fees of an incredible amount of $47,000 for missing 1 day on a suit that they had already essentially lost a portion of it.
Professor Daniel Gottlieb was a member of the Homeowners Association that sued a developer to protect their properties.
Mr. Fine was retained by the Marina Strand Colony 2 Homeowners Association to oppose the proposed massive Del Rey Shores project adjacent to them.
Fine made it his business to help people that were overwhelmed by, the expense of protecting their rights.
And so they began their suit against the county challenging the Del Rey Shores project. Then they were ambushed.
Well, 2 weeks after we hired him, and I didn't know this for a long time, but the state bar launched an investigation against him.
The president of the state bar at that time was Mr. Sheldon Sloan, who happened to represent the Epsteins, who were the developers of the Shores project. Do you have any idea why it's so difficult to take on the county?
You usually lose. There's a large record of losing. You go against the county and the developers. It's not just the developers against you, but the county. They signed this agreement, which I don't think is, well, I don't know if it's legal. I mean, it's probably legal, but it's not a good idea to have the government and private interest arrayed against the citizens of the county.
Why do litigants always lose when they sue the County of Los Angeles?
Fine has had discovered that the judges were all taking illegal monies from the county. The Constitution of California said that the judges should only be paid by the state.
In an unusual hearing, Mr. Fine put Superior Court Judge David Yaffe on the stand and questioned him about the illegal payments. Judge Yaffe clearly admitted the payments on the record. Mr. Gottlieb read from the court transcript.
I have received payments from the county. I did receive them while I was handling cases to which the county was a party. I did not report them on Form 700, which is filed with the Fair Political Practices Commission of the State of California. They were reported in 2 statements that I was issued at the end of the year.
Did these supplemental payments affect the decisions of the judges?
Fine says that the county, in recent years, whenever they had anybody in front of a judge that was suing the county, that the county always won. If it was in front of a jury, it was more even-handed.
Indeed, the county's website shows that from 2005 through 2008, all but 2 cases involving the county were decided by judges in the county's favor.
For his efforts, Mr. Fine was eventually disbarred, predicated on his conflicts with a commissioner named Mitchell.
Mr. Fine underwent a disbarment hearing in front of Judge Hahn. Professor Gottlieb suggests that the errors made by Commissioner Mitchell were compounded by State Bar Judge Hahn.
They use this collateral estoppel law, which says you can't relitigate the old stuff. So whatever Judge Mitchell said, and he got lots of things wrong in his orders, etc., but that's like an old trial. We don't want to look at that stuff. And that's not an unreasonable position to take, because otherwise your trials would never end.
But then those errors were compounded again when Mr. Fine appealed his disbarment. The State Bar Review Panel reversed the findings of the Hahn decision.
I think they should be careful, because the underlying mathematical model of this means you can end up proving everything you want. And you can see this in the difference between Judge Hahn's decisions, disbarring him, saying he's guilty of this, 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 this. And then the other one comes back without the benefit of being a trial court, I think. I'm not sure about that. And they just choose a entirely different set of counts.
According to Professor Gottlieb, this was a CYA effort on the part of the judges to cover the mistakes by Commissioner Mitchell.
And these judges here, it's interesting. You can see that they're really not happy with Mitchell, because they ding him in different places. But then they find, you know, well, maybe maybe, you know, his order, he started out wrong, but his order is okay. You shouldn't disobey his order. So they're afraid if they admit that at least one judge is just making all these orders because he doesn't know what he's doing, or he's corrupt. He may or may not be corrupt. He's at least stupid. After reading this, whatever, he decided that Fine was not proven guilty by making these statements false. So in other words, these are very definite statements, and nobody on the state bar could prove that they were wrong. And that's the reason I went there. I wanted to see how definite statements like this, I wanted to see if Fine really was lying about the $7,939. I mean, it's very specific things.
And what was your conclusion?
My conclusion was that there was no evidence that he was lying. He didn't want the state bar to look bad, because the state bar prosecution didn't succeed in proving what I thought was very obvious things.
In other words, the original Hahn disbarment hearing couldn't prove the serious false statements allegation against Mr. Fine. So the review panel labored long and hard to find some way to prevent Mr. Fine from keeping his law license.
They looked carefully at the word misappropriation, and they said, well, it looks like, they didn't say it this baldly, but it looks like he was only in the process of misappropriating. He didn't actually misappropriate. So that's what you're getting from the state bar court. And then the next courts are, they're probably not going to look at this, because it's all collateral estoppel. You know, these courts have made their decisions. Who are we to tell them they're wrong?
Leslie Dutton pressed Mr. Gottlieb to identify the power that really destroyed Mr. Fine.
The people who pursued the contempt in the Marina Strand Colony 2 versus the Shores were the lawyers R.J. Comer and Joshua.
And who'd they work for?
And they worked for the Shores project.
And who owned the Shores?
And Epstein owned the Shores.
And the property is owned, the Shores is located on property. Who owns that property?
The people who own the property is the county, but it's leased to the Shores, to the Epsteins. So everything in the Marina del Rey is owned by the county. They're supposed to protect it the way the national government is protecting Yosemite. But instead, they're breaking all the laws, ignoring the laws, and trying to make a Miami Beach out of it.
Being full disclosure in the news behind the news, we discovered an unholy alliance between the county and the developers.
That if one of them gets sued, the other comes to your defense. So all the lawyers working for the county are sort of subsumed as being working for these developers too, because if the developers get sued, then the county gets involved.
Professor Gottlieb is very concerned about the effect all of this will have in the future.
Well, if you want to intimidate people from practicing sort of public interest law, this is a good way to do it.
If you would like to see the entire full-length programs, contact your cable television provider, or you can purchase the DVDs here at fulldisclosure.net.